Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Hope I finish on time. Look like I'm on time. That's all right?
Hare Krishna, I think continue for a few minutes. Maharaj is not online at the moment.
So you want to sing Jai Radha Madhava or just...
yeah, I think Jai Radha, you can sing Jai Radha Madhava.
Okay.
Prabhu, Maharaj is here. Thank you, Diva Govind Prabhu and the family for a wonderful kirtan. Now I'll request Kadam Kana Prabhu to introduce Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So we'd like to thank His Holiness Bhakti Vinash Narasimha Maharaj, Bhakti Vigna Vinash Narasimha Maharaj, for giving us his association today. I just thought I'll just introduce Maharaj. I'm just trying to see where the Maharaj is here. Oh, Hare Krishna Maharaj. Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances. So just a short introduction about Maharaj. Maharaj joined in London. He met Srila Prabhupada in London and he was initiated in 1971. And so for almost now, it's about 50 years, Maharaj has been serving Srila Prabhupada. Maharaj preaches in many different countries. He preaches in some very challenging areas like China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and other Asian countries like Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia. And he has many disciples in all these countries. Maharaj also has various administrative roles, and he's a teacher of Bhakti Sastri and other courses. Maharaj does seminars on different devotional topics. And anyone who meets Maharaj would be attracted to Maharaj's simplicity, humility, and his absolute surrender to Srila Prabhupada. So again, Maharaj, we'd like to thank you for your time and giving us the association. So over to you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Kadamba Kanna Prabhu. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pricharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaivacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'm correct that you want me to speak about Srila Prabhupada, right?
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay, so as you heard, I had the good fortune to meet Srila Prabhupada. I was about 21. I knew about Krishna consciousness when I was studying in the college. And I saw them on television, I think. Yeah, I saw them on television chanting Hare Krishna. And I'd seen a Back to Godhead magazine. I was living up in Edinburgh at the time. And after I graduated from college, I went to London. And then when I was in London, I got a Krishna book. And then I started to go to temple. I got the Krishna book from a bookstore and started to go to the temple and became attracted by the devotees. So Srila Prabhupada wanted people to go to India. I joined in London actually, but then later on I moved to America. I wanted to get some more experience of Krishna consciousness in the USA. At that time in the 1970s, our Krishna consciousness movement was really exploding in the USA. They were really leading the field and we were encouraged to learn from them. So I went there for some time, but then I was asked to go to India. Gopal Krishna Goswami was appointed the GBC representative. Well, actually, he'd been working, and Prabhupada had asked him to go to India and take up some administrative duties there. So he was leaving New York Temple, and the temple president told him he could get 2 devotees to go with him. So I was one of them. Maharaj thought it would be good for me to go because coming from the UK, it was better for me, for I didn't need a visa. But Americans going to India, they needed a visa. So he thought, you can go to India and stay. So I went and I stayed for 4 years. I stayed for 4 years. And I had the opportunity to see Srila Prabhupada a bit closer than in the West. when Srila Prabhupada came to America, especially, there were so many devotees that you couldn't get near. But still, it was always very wonderful just to see Srila Prabhupada and to hear him speak. But in India, it was a little bit more intimate, less devotees. Prabhupada, of course, had his crew with him. So I was first of all in Delhi in 1975, that was. I came to India in 1975. We had a very small center in Delhi in 1975. It was in a place called Bengali Market, not far from Connaught Circus, actually, which is the center of Delhi. And we had Radhapartha Sarati also there, the deities, which were later installed in the east of Kailash, temple. And there was only a few devotees, like 5 or 6, maybe. The temple president was an American householder, Tejas Prabhu, with his wife. They'd come there and they were serving there. So we landed in Delhi, so I stayed there in Delhi for some time and helped there, doing some service, helping to serve the deities and to go out and meet life members. We had a rented house, and the deity worship and the expenses of the temple, whatever funds we could get, it came from life membership. We had to enroll life members. And we would go out to meet people, go to their offices, sometimes go early in the morning to their homes and try to meet them and request them to join our Krishna consciousness movement. Prabhupada had instituted the life membership program. He saw that in India, it wasn't really very good for devotees to go out on the street and to be selling books there, as we did in the West. Of course, in India, there's many vendors on the street. And for the devotees to be out there, doesn't give a very good image of the devotees. So Srila Prabhupada instituted the life membership program as a means of getting some funds to maintain the temple. You have to understand that our movement was very new and people were not so much familiar with us. And there had been some counter propaganda, you could say some propaganda against us. There was a film made called Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, in which the main star was a person called Devanand. And it portrayed the image of Hare Krishna devotees as just some drug addicts who were smoking marijuana to get some intoxication and chanting Hare Krishna. And this was get their intoxication. It was part of their intoxication. So people in India were quite influenced by that movie. And when they saw devotees, they would often sing the song, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram. It had been a very popular movie, and the theme song said, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Dum Ba Da Dum, something like that. You know, Dum Ba Da Dum means like take some marijuana or something. So it didn't give a good image to our devotees. Prabhupada said, he thought the government might have been behind it. At that time, the government was headed by Indira Gandhi, and they were not so much favorable to religious movements. They wanted more to develop industry. Anyway, it took some time for that movie to wear off, and it was a challenge to go out and meet people, especially in Delhi, trying to get people to be life members. because people didn't know our movement very well. Srila Prabhupada, of course, was not known much to them. Although he did have a few programs, they'd had a few pandal programs, like in Delhi, they had a couple of pandal programs, a big pandal where thousands of people would come and they would see the devotees and they would hear Prabhupada lecture. So that helped a lot to get a good image for the devotees. Still, it was difficult being foreigners and coming to India in 1970s. India was not the India it is today. Delhi was a much smaller city. Now it's expanded a lot. And it was quite a challenge to go out and get people to become members, especially when you don't know the local language and you're a foreigner. So it happened after some time, you know, Prabhupada came there one time when I was there. Prabhupada did come. He'd been he'd been outside of India, and then he came to Delhi. And he stayed with us for a night or two. Yeah, one night actually, one night. We had a program. Prabhupada came and Prabhupada stayed with us. The devotees who were staying there, they moved out. They found some other place to go and stay. And Prabhupada stayed in the place which we were renting for the ladies. And we invited some different favorable business people to come and meet Prabhupada. And Prabhupada, of course, would talk to them and learn about them. He'd ask them, what business are you doing? And like this. And so there was one man came, he had a transport company. And so I remember Prabhupada said to him, oh, you have a transport company. He said, you know, I need transport tomorrow. He said, I want to go to Vrindavan tomorrow. Can you arrange a car to take me to Vrindavan tomorrow morning? And so the man was a little shocked, but he said to Prabhupada, I said, well, yes, why not? And so this way, Prabhupada arranged a car to take him to Vrindavan the next morning. But I thought it was quite interesting how Prabhupada did these things, you know, on himself. He could understand it's a little difficult for the temple, that our finances were constrained, and we didn't have any vehicle of our own. We would simply move around the city in auto rickshaws. Anyway, Prabhupada used his own initiative to engage that man in his service and take him to Vrindavan. It was also interesting to see how Prabhupada would come to the small center like Delhi, which we were at that time. And Prabhupada knew we had Krishna Balaram Mandir in Vrindavan, which was much bigger and more devotees, but still Prabhupada made a point to come there to Delhi to meet people and to see what was going on. He was concerned for every center. He wouldn't just go to the big centers and avoid the little places. He came there to Delhi, although we were only half a dozen devotees, and he met the life members and talked to them, encourage people to help us to establish the center. Of course, now in Delhi, it's so much expanded. There's so many devotees. The local people, all local people practically, and so many centers. Prabhupada actually envisioned that. He said in Delhi, he said you should have a center in every suburb. Like there's about 18 suburbs in Delhi. So Prabhupada said you should have a center in every one of those suburbs. So there are many centers now coming up, and not small. Some of the centers are really big. They're constructing very nice centers. So Prabhupada saw the future, that there's a lot of preaching could go on in Delhi. And under the leadership of Gopal Krishna Maharaj and Lokanath Swami Maharaj and such people. So much nice preaching has been going on, and so many people have come to Krishna consciousness. Of course, in those days, we didn't have many people and we didn't have many books either. The books hadn't been printed. We were still printing the books. Prabhupada was still translating Srimad Bhagavatam, and the Macmillan Bhagavad Gita had just been printed with the full edition. Previously, in the beginning, like 1971, we had the abridged Bhagavad Gita printed by Macmillan. Then later on, Macmillan printed the full Bhagavad Gita with all the Sanskrit verses, word for word and everything. And then after a while, then they didn't print it anymore. So then we could print it ourselves. It came back to the BBT and we could print it ourselves. So books were very less. We only had a few books, and devotees also, we were a few foreigners, one or two Indian people helping out, but not much. So it was very early days of our movement in India. But Prabhupada was not discouraged. He knew the potential and he put a lot of energy, and he brought so many of his top devotees there to preach there. Previously in London, when I joined in 1971, everyone had practically left. All the leading devotees like Yamuna and Guru Das and Shyam Sundar and Malati, they'd all gone to India with Prabhupada. Prabhupada told them, you come with me to India, we'll have Sankirtan party. And so they joined Prabhupada and they traveled to India. And they preached in India there. Then later on, Tamal Krishna also went there. At that time, he was not a sannyasi. Initially, he was a householder. And then he moved to India also with his wife. So when I came to London and joined the temple in London, Mukunda was there. He was not yet a sannyasi. He was there. But after a very short time, he went back to America. So the temple, we were about 20 devotees in London, 20 young people, all young, teenagers. And I was 21. There's a few, maybe 22. We were all really young. Oh, Subhag was there. He was the only Indian in the temple at the time. He'd come to study in England. So he was a little older. He was like 28. So like that, we were all really young. But it was very nice. The atmosphere was really wonderful. And everybody worked together, and we all were very much in cooperation with each other, and very enthusiastic and dedicated to Krishna consciousness. India was quite a challenge because, well, we were coming from the West, we were not so used to the conditions, the climate, the whole environment, the standard of living, quite different from what we were used to. So I came to India, I came just after the opening of the Krishna Balaram temple. Many devotees had left. I'd been in New York, and many devotees had gone to India for the opening of the Krishna Balaram temple. And so I was going to India to stay. So they told me, you wait until we go to India, and when we come back, then you go. So they went for the opening of the Krishna Balaram temple. And when they came back, then I left with another devotee, and we came through London and then went on to India and came there. It was the summer in Delhi, and it was really hot. So I was not so used to the conditions, and I got jaundice. I got jaundice there. So when I got jaundice, then Gopal Krishna Maharaj saw me and he said, well, he wasn't Maharaj at that time, but anyway, he was managing, and he said, better if you go to Calcutta. He said in Calcutta, the conditions are a little better. And the prasadam also was a little better. In Delhi in the summer, we were eating every day just tindu sabji. It's a very simple vegetable. The tindu sabji and rice and dal. Simple, very simple, basic diet. Anyway, I drank some water, which was not so clean, I guess. There was not mineral water in those days. We didn't see bottles of mineral water. So I drank some water, maybe it hadn't been boiled or filtered, or maybe I took some halava, which had been made with oil, or something happened. Anyway, I got jaundice and I became quite weak. So Gopal Krishna told me, go to Calcutta. You stay there. It'll be easier for you to get your health back. So I went over to Calcutta on the train with another devotee and stayed there in Calcutta. Of course, that's Prabhupada's birthplace. And so it was very nice to be there in Calcutta. People were much more familiar with Prabhupada a little bit because Prabhupada's a Bengali, he's from there and well known. And his own family are there. We actually had a program one day with his family. When they moved into a new apartment, we all went there, we did a kirtan, and Prabhupada's ex-wife was there, and his son also. Prabhupada had 3 sons, 2 daughters. So youngest son was called Vrindavan Day. I remember talking with Vrindavan Day Prabhu, and he was telling me, he told me on a telephone conversation, he was talking to me, and he told me, he said, you don't know how strict our father was with us. I could understand that certainly Srila Prabhupada could be quite strict sometimes, but also it could be very, very sweet, soft. Just like we say about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it could be like a thunderbolt and like a rose. He had both sides. So Srila Prabhupada also was like that. Sometimes he'd be very, very severe, and other times he'd be very soft and gentle. So I was staying in Calcutta and doing life membership, helping to raise funds to support the temple. Again, we were renting the house initially there in Calcutta. It was a rented property. Later on, we purchased it. Now it's our own property. And we even purchased it downstairs also now. But initially, we were just renting. And hardly we could pay the rent. Prabhupada always said that we began the movement with no money. But Prabhupada never worried about money. Even though we had no money, Prabhupada didn't worry about it. And Prabhupada would come to Calcutta temple. He'd stay in the temple, just like he stayed with us in London. Prabhupada liked to stay with the devotees. I remember one time in London, we had an American devotee came. He came from Los Angeles. Los Angeles is the new Dwarka of ISKCON. It's very opulent, big. They have a big place. So he came to our London. We were staying in a small place. At this time, George Harrison had not purchased the Bhaktivedanta Manor. And we were just renting one small house in London, number 7 Bury Place, not far from the British Museum. So we were staying there and it was quite crowded. So this one devotee came from America to help us organize because Prabhupada was coming. Prabhupada was expected. So the American devotee came there and he wrote a letter to Prabhupada. He said, Prabhupada, he said, you know, this center which we have here in London is really not adequate enough for you to stay here. Your room, he said, there is one room for you, but he said, it would be better if we get you a room in the hotel and you can stay in the hotel. We'll get you a suite in the hotel. Because the room is, the temple facilities here are very less. But Prabhupada wrote back to the devotee and he said, I don't want to stay in the hotel. I want to stay in the temple. And that was generally Prabhupada's policy everywhere he went. Even though we had very less facilities. As I said, in Delhi, he stayed with us in Delhi, in the Bengali market, in the little house. And he stayed with us in Calcutta also. Again, in Calcutta, we had a little room. And Prabhupada would stay there with us. And Prabhupada would take his massage out on the veranda. We had a veranda on the temple in Calcutta. And every morning, Prabhupada liked to take his massage after breakfast in the morning. Sometime after, we wait for some time, of course, to digest his breakfast. But somewhere in the morning, maybe about 11, he'd like to have a massage. And he would go outside and he would do it on the veranda there in Calcutta. I remember I saw also in New York. In New York, we were staying in Brooklyn. We had a center there in Brooklyn. This was 439 Henry Street. And Prabhupada would go outside in the Gamsha, in his Gamsha, and into the garden. And he'd have his massage out there in New York, in Brooklyn. He didn't worry about where he was. He would keep his schedule. He liked to do his things. He liked to keep his program up, his timetable. So Prabhupada would have his massage there on the veranda in Calcutta. And in the evening, they would invite, you know, a lot of local people would come. Prabhupada would give Bengali lecture. Whenever Prabhupada would give a talk, and even whenever people came to see him, Prabhupada always wanted that we must give them some prasadam. In India, in places like Calcutta, prasadam would be something like, you know, unless the devotees were having a full meal, then people, of course, could sit down and take their meal with the devotees. But usually prasadam meant a piece of sweet, maybe some sandesh or a piece of burfi or something like that. We'd give that kind, we'd purchase it from a sweet store because we were cooking on coal and we didn't have so much facilities. We're not so used to cooking in India. So we just purchased from the sweet shop and give everyone a piece of sweet. That satisfied Prabhupada. Prabhupada was always concerned about prasadam, that it should be distributed. I remember also when he came in London and we had programs in the town hall in different suburbs of London, then Prabhupada would ask, what prasadam are you giving? And he would look at it and see, what is this? And he wanted to make sure that we were making nice arrangements for the guests. There should always be some kind of prasadam to offer to the guests. So Srila Prabhupada liked to meet the guests. He wanted to talk to them and find out their interest about Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada would inquire about them. I remember also we went to Mayapur. Prabhupada, on his way to Mayapur, he had a routine, you know, going to Mayapur. In those days, the roads were really bad. They're still bad, but they were really bad, like 45 years ago. So on the way to Mayapur, Prabhupada would stop on the way to take his breakfast. And there was a particular mango grove on the side of the road where Prabhupada liked to stop. So every time when he would always come first, he'd come into Calcutta and then he'd come to the temple. Now going to the temple, it shows how concerned he was about the temple, because the Calcutta airport is out there on the road going to Mayapur. But Prabhupada would come back, he would turn around and go into Calcutta, into the city, go to the Calcutta temple and stay there for a day or two, meet people, and then come back and then go to Mayapur. So Srila Prabhupada was concerned about these temples, how important they are. He wanted to see what's going on, what are they doing. Anyway, Prabhupada had this program to stop at the mango grove on the way to Mayapur every time and take his breakfast. So on one occasion, we had a big fleet of vehicles. Gargamuni Maharaj at that time had come from Germany, and he brought a number of young men with him, book distributors, and he brought a number of Mercedes-Benz vehicles, minivans. Right? And the idea was that they would travel around India and preach and distribute books. And they did for some time. But then they had to leave the country because, there's a carne, there's legislation about bringing foreign vehicles into India. You have to pay a very big tax. So he had 6 vehicles. We couldn't pay the tax for all of them. Anyway, for some time, we had these vehicles. We were using them to travel around India to preach. So this particular day, we were all going out to Mayapur. It was a big fleet of vehicles. There was Gargamuni Swami, Achutananda Swami, Mahamsa Swami. There were many Swamis all there, about half a dozen Swamis. And Prabhupada was there, of course, and Prabhupada's servants and secretary. So it was a big group of people, many vehicles, and we all went out there. We stopped. Prabhupada had his breakfast packed, and we stopped there to give Prabhupada his breakfast at the mango grove. So Prabhupada was given a nice seat, and his servants served him, and Prabhupada took his breakfast. Then after Prabhupada had taken his prasadam and washed and everything, then all the sannyasis sat down. And then we served all the sannyasis, and they took their prasadam. And after the sannyasis had taken prasadam and washed up, then we all sat down and we took our prasadam. And Prabhupada said, this is very nice. He said, when you observe the etiquette like this, then certainly Krishna is present. So Prabhupada liked to see us observe etiquette, Vaishnava etiquette. It's important. He liked to see that. Anyway, after taking breakfast, Prabhupada would then go out to Mayapur, and he'd go out to Mayapur, and of course he'd be nicely received. Jaipataka Maharaj and Bhavananda Maharaj at that time, they were there with all the devotees, and they had a big kirtan to welcome Prabhupada, and Prabhupada would come in, and immediately Prabhupada would want to go around and want to inspect everything. What is this? What is that? What have you done here? Prabhupada wanted to see everything. He wanted to know about everything which was going on there. It was very important to him, the Mayapur project. I remember some of Prabhupada's lectures, like Prabhupada had come to Mayapur. It was really, I think it was just for the Gaur Purnima festival. Just before the Gaur Purnima festival, Prabhupada had told all the devotees from the West that you come to Mayapur, we'll have a big festival in Mayapur this year. I want you all to come. So many came, many young Westerners came. And a lot of them were thinking, we're here in India, we want to go to the restaurants and check out what they're cooking, we'll taste their different dishes, because many people were thinking about having a vegetarian restaurant, making their own Govinda's restaurant. And they thought, let's go to some restaurants and check out the cooking. So Srila Prabhupada was giving lectures practically the first morning. And I remember at the end of the lecture, Prabhupada said to all the devotees, he said, please do not eat in the restaurants. It was like flabbergasted. Everybody was flabbergasted. No, Prabhupada's saying we can't eat in the restaurants. And Prabhupada explained, he said, you are Vaishnava. You've got the tilak and the kuntimala, shika, like that. He said, people know you're Vaishnava. They know what is the standard. You should not eat in the restaurants. So like that, Prabhupada was making it clear to the devotees what the standards were which he wanted to be observed. When I joined the movement, we always had the standard that we wouldn't eat at night. We'd take breakfast and then lunch, but we wouldn't eat in the evening. Prabhupada had said, no grains after 4 in the afternoon. So that's how it was in the beginning. We'd take breakfast, a simple breakfast, usually like a piece of fruit with some cereal, and then we'd take lunch. And lunch was like rice, dal, chapati, and sabji. That was it. And then a feast on Sunday. There would be a feast on Sunday. Otherwise, it was very basic, but very, very satisfying. Very nice chapatis, nice dal, sabji, and like that. You could, and you're hungry, Prabhupada say, eat more rice and chapatis. If you want to fill your belly. So we lived like that, very basic, simple, but very satisfying. Don't eat after 4, but then later on, when I went to India, like 1975, they had a different program, you know, it was so different because we would go out all day. We would be out in the city going around to see people trying to make life members. So there in India, we'd take breakfast in the morning and then we'd go out and we'd come back in the evening, we'd come back like 5 o'clock and we'd have to take our meal because we hadn't taken any lunch. We'd been out all day because we were going around meeting people. So we'd have rice, dal, chapati, like that at 5 o'clock in the evening. So it was a different program in India. But initially, Prabhupada had said, no grains after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. No grains, because you cannot digest. Prabhupada wanted us to keep good health. And he knew if you put a lot of grains in the belly in the evening, you won't sleep well. And you'll have a bad sleep, you'll wake up the next day, you won't be properly nourished, you haven't had a good sleep. So Prabhupada he knew about all of these things. He knew about Ayurveda. Ayurveda tells the power of digestion is according to the position of the sun. When the sun is at full height, that's when the power of digestion is the strongest. But at sunrise and sunset, then the power of digestion will go down. So they have a saying, and similar, as interesting, the same saying is there in China as they have in India, that you should eat a good breakfast, you should eat a full lunch, and you should eat very less in the night. So this is Ayurvedic, and this is also supported in the Chinese medical system as well, that better not to eat heavy food at night. Of course, it's difficult for some people. Some people, they can't do it. They're working all day and they come home at night, they have their big meal in the night. But it's not a healthy lifestyle. Prabhupada wanted us to keep good health. Prabhupada also wanted us to attend the temple program. That was very important to Prabhupada. One time Prabhupada was giving lecture in the evening and he asked, where are all the devotees? So the temple president told Prabhupada, he said, Prabhupada, they're still out on book distribution. They don't come back until later because they can do a lot of books in the evening. But Prabhupada told the temple president, he said, that's not good. He said, just to make money, you have them staying out all night. He said, that's not good. He said, they should come back for the evening program. He said, don't let them just be out there all night just so you can get more money for the temple. He said, they must come for the morning and the evening program. If they don't hear the lectures, if they don't take part in the program, they won't go out, they won't keep going out there selling books. They'll become discouraged and they'll go away. You'll lose them. So it's very important. You keep them Krishna conscious. And to be Krishna conscious, they have to come to the program, the temple program. They have to hear the philosophy. They have to take part in the kirtan. They have to see the arti. These activities are very important. So Srila Prabhupada wanted us to do these things. It was important. He didn't worry about, oh, we need money. You know, devotees may say, oh, Prabhupada, we're collecting money for building the Krishna Balaram temple, or we're collecting money for the Juhu temple. Prabhupada didn't care. He said, you just come for the temple program. That's important. Take part in the temple program. I had the opportunity to chant for Srila Prabhupada one time in Mumbai. We were in Mumbai, Juhu. Temple had not yet opened. Prabhupada was staying in his quarters. Somehow they managed to get Prabhupada's quarters somewhat ready. And Prabhupada was in very poor health. This was 1977, just a month or so before Prabhupada departed from the world. Prabhupada was on the bed. He had to be carried everywhere. So we were having kirtan. Prabhupada wanted kirtan, and it was arranged that 2 men at a time would go and do kirtan for Prabhupada. And it was a very simple kirtan. We had very tiny, very small, very light sounding kartals. And we would just go and sit in the Prabhupada's room and we'd chant. And we would chant. So I was there. Tamal Krishna Maharaj would organize the schedule and he would choose who could go and chant for Prabhupada. So I was fortunate that on one occasion, Tamal Krishna Maharaj allowed me to go with another brahmachari, an American devotee. And we went into Prabhupada's room to chant for him. So this devotee I was with, he chanted Govinda Jaya Jaya Gopala. And as soon as he chanted this, Prabhupada eyes opened and he said, just chant Hare Krishna. Just chant Hare Krishna. Prabhupada just wanted the Hare Krishna mantra. Didn't want anything else. Now, sometimes Prabhupada would chant that mantra, but we saw towards the end of his manifest presence in this world, Prabhupada just wanted the Hare Krishna mantra. Prabhupada had a lot of different standards, for things. Another time I was in Vrindavan, I was in the Krishna Balaram Mandir, and it was noontime, and we were to do, there was nobody there to do kirtan. So I came and I picked up the kartals and I began leading the kirtan. But a few minutes after I began the kirtan, Prabhupada's secretary came out. He was a sannyasi, a devotee called Akshayananda Swami. I think actually he's from New Zealand, actually. Maybe you know him. Anyway, he came out, he was serving Prabhupada, and he said, Prabhupada wants to know, why is nobody playing the mridanga? I was playing the kartals and leading the kirtan. Prabhupada was in his room at the back of the Krishna Balaram temple, and Prabhupada was listening, and he couldn't hear the mridanga, and he was concerned. He sent his secretary out to ask, why is nobody playing mridanga? And so I said, well, I only play kartals, I don't play mridanga. So the Prabhupada's secretary said, well, Prabhupada wants mridanga. So he had to stay, Prabhupada's secretary had to stay and play the mridanga for the arti. But it's an indication of what Prabhupada wanted, how careful he was about everything, that you have to do this, you don't do that. You know, he was telling us, he was training us, constantly training us what he wanted, what we had to do. So we try to remember all of these instructions. We try to keep them all in our life. Prabhupada was very concerned about our movement, taking care of guests, receiving guests properly. I'd brought a group of people to Mayapur from Calcutta. There was one man, he had a jeweler's shop, Bengali man, he had a jeweler's shop. So he came with all of his family, and they came out and they came to meet Prabhupada. And Prabhupada was very happy to meet them, and Prabhupada was talking with them. And then Prabhupada asked, at one point, the man mentioned my name because I brought them there to Mayapur. I'd kind of been guiding them and bringing them there. And Prabhupada said, "Who's that?" So Prabhupada didn't know me. So it was interesting because you always wonder, you know, does Prabhupada know me? Because there's so many devotees, so many disciples. So the man mentioned my name, and Prabhupada said, "Who's that?" And then the man pointed to me. Prabhupada said, "Oh." So it was interesting. I could understand Prabhupada really didn't know me. But then Prabhupada, he asked Brahmananda Swami, who was a very senior devotee of Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada told him, "You take care of these people. Make sure they're very well looked after." So it was very nice that Prabhupada got his senior devotees to take care of people when they came out there to Mayapur. He liked to see everyone looked after. When they come to Mayapur or Vrindavan, he wants to make sure they get a good impression. So the rooms, very important. And the cleanliness, of course, in Mayapur was very important. Prabhupada would go around and check everything, make sure that everything is done. If Prabhupada saw that nobody was in the room and we left the light on and the fans running, Prabhupada would be very upset. Prabhupada would say, "Nobody's in the room and the fans are running, the light's on, that's wasting money. You're sucking the blood. You're sucking my blood. You don't care to turn off the lights. You don't care to turn off the fans. This is not good." So Prabhupada was very strict about these things, constantly instructing us, be careful. Don't waste Krishna's energy. Just like one morning, Prabhupada was on a walk and he saw there was water running. There was a tap running. It was on someone's garden. And Prabhupada sent the devotees and go in there, turn the tap off. Prabhupada didn't like to see anything of Krishna's energy being wasted. We have to be very careful. Everything belongs to Krishna and it should be used for Krishna's service. We shouldn't waste anything. So Prabhupada was very concerned about these things. He wanted to see everything done nicely for the service of Krishna. We bought Prabhupada, well, the devotees anyway, they bought Prabhupada 3 ambassadors, one for Calcutta, one for Delhi, and one for Mumbai. At one point, we were thinking to bring Prabhupada, we wanted to bring Prabhupada a Mercedes-Benz or a good car, bring it from Germany. But then they decided better to get the Indian ambassador because then if anything goes wrong with it, it can always be maintained. You can get spare parts. Because those times, 1970s, Ambassador was the only car on the road practically. So, and everyone had spare parts for Ambassadors. So they got nice Ambassadors and they had them redone, they had them reupholstered, put very nice red upholstery inside, with nice big chairs, comfortable chair for Prabhupada. And they put a big chrome tilak on the front of the car also. Well, Prabhupada was very happy. He liked these cars very much. So whenever he went to Calcutta or Delhi or Mumbai, the vehicle would be there, go to the airport, pick up Prabhupada and bring him. We had our own car. So Prabhupada liked that. He thought that should be there because we're a big movement. We should be able to arrange our own vehicles. So these are some memories which I have of Srila Prabhupada, and I've been mainly reflecting on India. So I'll stop here now and I'll ask if there's any questions from anyone. Anybody like to ask anything?
Thank you, Maharaj, for sharing your experience in early India. So much austerity. And compared to those early days, Maharaj, you preaching in Southeast Asia, how are the challenges compared to your early days?
Well, of course, India is a very special place because in India, everybody's Hindu pretty much. And so they're very supportive of our movement and they have respect for sadhus, you know. They see us in tilak with shaved heads and we're preaching Bhagavad Gita. It's not something foreign. So it's much easier to preach here in India in that sense. There are difficulties, of course. It's, you know, the third world and there's so many philosophies and different groups and as well, so many other sadhus and so on. But the general mass of people are respectful and receptive to what we're doing, and they appreciate, they try to help. Outside India, it's different. You go to countries like Thailand, it's a Buddhist country. Previously, it had been a Hindu kingdom. Previously, the kings of the past were they all had the name Rama. And the capital used to be Ayodhya. But still, it's a Buddhist country now, and now the king is a Buddhist, the king has to be a Buddhist, and all the people, 90% are Buddhist. They don't really know anything about Buddhism, but if you ask them, what is your religion? They'll say, I'm a Buddhist. So it's not very easy to introduce Krishna consciousness there. Everywhere, people have the culture of meat eating. Similarly, go to countries like Taiwan, it's a Buddhist country. They have some respect for monks, but, you know, not a lot of interest. It's a bit difficult for them. People who are in a Buddhist country, they have difficulty to understand that there can be a God, that there's a supreme controller, because they think that ultimately there's nothing. Buddhism teaches people that there's no God, there's nothing. Ultimately, you don't exist, we're not real. That kind of thinking is there. So people have some interest in our philosophy, but when they hear our rules, then it's too much for them. Oh, vegetarian, that's a big challenge for people. No intoxication, that's another big challenge. No illicit sex, wow, people, how can they live? You know, they cannot imagine. to give up these things. Everywhere, people are degraded by the influence of Kali Yuga. So it's a rare soul who can actually accept the Krishna conscious principles. But still we preach. And Prabhupada told us, just like China, Prabhupada said, you distribute the books and that will create the field. So somehow or other, we try to get the books in there. And we're doing the same in other countries. We continue like that. In Thailand also. Although people in Thailand, they don't read a lot, but still we distribute the books. And he said, the books will create the field for preaching in the future. You distribute the books. So we try to get people to hear. That's important. People need to see the example. They need to see other people taking up this lifestyle, and then they can be convinced that it can also work for them. Just like Prabhupada went to America, and Prabhupada was there, Prabhupada was personally guiding them every day, associating with the devotees and preaching and cooking for them. So they became encouraged, they took it up, they became serious about it. So the example is very important. We need people who are willing to accept that kind of austerity, to go into places where there's nothing and develop it, develop the field. Just like people went to Australia and New Zealand. In the beginning, there was nothing, but they went there and they began and they developed some field, they developed some people. Initially, there was nothing there. Nowadays, you find, we have temples that, and mostly, a lot of it is more maintaining the temples. You have a congregation and the congregation will give the money to maintain the temple. Previously, the devotees living in the temple would have to maintain the temple. They'd have to go out and collect money to maintain the temple. Nowadays, the devotees, they can live off the congregation. We have, the groundwork is done, but of course, they still have the work to do to maintain the temple. And maintenance is, sometimes we say, even more difficult than creating a temple. Lord Vishnu maintains. Brahma does the creation, but Lord Vishnu maintains because the maintenance is more difficult. And we can see at the present time, with the pandemic around the world, how difficult it is for maintaining temples, to maintain temples. Some temples have a very serious economic crisis because no activity. So temples locked down, people can't come to the temple. So sometimes they cannot get any support from the congregation. It can be difficult. Asia hasn't been developed very much. There's still a lot of work needed there. Countries like Japan also difficult, very difficult field for preaching there. People are very into money and business. They're not too much interested. They often think of Hare Krishna, they think, oh, this is Indian religion. And some people, like in China, they think, I'm Chinese, this is an Indian religion. Or I'm Japanese, this is Indian. So people have sometimes this material conception. We have to preach, we have to bring people to a higher consciousness. So Sankirtan is very, very important and very powerful. It certainly helps to change people's hearts. The more we have Sankirtan parties going out, the more we have prasadam distribution and book distribution, then gradually people take an interest. It it has its effect, but it takes time. You have to be very patient. Countries like Philippines, it's a Christian country. Well, at least people there believe in God. They believe in God. It's just, they have some difficulties, like everywhere else, they have difficulties with regulative principles. People, drugs and intoxication and these things, illicit sex, these things are big challenges for people. They don't have so much education in controlling the senses. So training in the beginning is very helpful. If people can get brahmachari training, if you can train people up in the brahmacharya or the brahmacharini life, then that's a very big help. There's a lot of work to be done. But these countries are, the preaching is going on. We do have groups of devotees around these places. Philippines, there's a number of devotees, some nice devotees. Some of them, of course, they find it easier to get out of the Philippines. A number of devotees from Philippines, a few of them did manage to get to America, and it's easier for them there. One or two managed to come to Hong Kong. It's easier. It's a bit difficult in the Philippines to keep the principles. So it takes more work. We need more devotees. We need people willing to go there and spend time there and stay there to dedicate their life for the preaching, to establish the movement. That's important. They like to feel that they're not being forgotten about. That if we go there, they want us to stay there and be with them and continue to be with them. You have to give your life. Not everybody's willing to do that. Okay, any other question?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I just wanted to ask when we hear from you how Srila Prabhupada and yourself and the initial disciples, they struggled really hard in the early days of the movement. But now we've got temples and there's more opulence, and there's a tendency for us to sort of get complacent and take it easy. So how to overcome this complacency, Maharaj?
Well, that's why you have people like GBC, and you have also sannyasis, and that their job is to inspire everyone and encourage everyone with their enthusiasm, that their enthusiasm should be contagious. With a little bit of their association, we become more enthusiastic to go out and preach and to continue the Sankirtan movement. So association with enthusiastic devotees is really the answer to everything. You've got to, we like to bring in new people also. New people come in from different places. That's always inspiring for people. Probably, I don't know, maybe New Zealand, a place like New Zealand, I've never been there. It's a bit far away. It's a bit, down there in the bottom of the bottom of the hemisphere. Not so easy to come in there. So when somebody comes, you get some new people coming, then it's a real treat for the devotees. So this is something which is valuable to have, to keep the devotees enthused and to keep them working and keep them fired up. Then association. seeing other people come and visit them, showing that people really care about them, that you really care about this place. It's not like, oh, that place, that's off the map, you know, nobody goes there. Even the chicken doesn't go there to lay its eggs. You know, it's off the map. So you don't want to think like that, because if you think like that, well, nobody cares anyway. Nobody ever comes here. Nobody cares about us. So what does it matter? No, we shouldn't think like that. And that's why it's important for people to be coming by. I'm sure His Holiness Devamrita Swami Maharaj comes by there quite a bit. And Indrajumna Swami Maharaj also, he likes to also go there to New Zealand, I know. So you do get these very inspirational devotees coming there from time to time. And that's a tremendous boost for the preaching there. You know, having these kind of very powerful, charismatic devotees coming there and visiting there, giving classes and going around, then it has a very positive effect on the devotee atmosphere. That's what's required. You have to always be bringing in people, just like in Russia, also in Russia, you know, quite far away. You know, if you're in London, so many people coming through there all the time. But if you're way up in Russia, how many people come through there? Not too many. You're kind of cut off. So it's important to try to encourage these devotees, different devotees, to come and visit there and to give their association and to inspire the community and inspire the congregation. It's a big help to our preaching. Right?
Thank you, Maharaj. Maharaj, there's a question from Vaishnavi Vani Mataji. She says, Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, my humble obeisances. I sometimes feel they distribute a lot of books, but no one comes back. It is like we have to understand what kind of books we have to distribute for the country or people. Maybe Bhagavad Gita is too difficult for them. We have to distribute some simple magazines in the beginning. Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Well, you shouldn't be so discouraged like that. You shouldn't think nobody's coming. You should be happy, first of all, that the books are out there. Sometimes we explain that the books are a bit like time bombs, that it takes some time before it explodes. And so similarly, these books are a bit like that. You know, people get the book, they don't come immediately. It may take time, may take even years before they respond and before they react. But the fact that they've got the book, it's a good start. That's the right thing. You know, we should be happy about that. You engage someone in devotional service. If they bought the book, they gave some money, they gave donation, that's good. Their money is going for the service of Krishna. And even if they got the book free, they got the book, it's a big advantage to them because the seed is there. And in the future, that seed may fructify. You don't know. You don't know who's going to become a devotee, but we should be thankful that the book is out there, that they got the book, and let's see how long it takes. It's certainly helpful when we have different seminars, just like just now we're doing things like the Gita Gyan or something, I can't remember. And we do the seminar chapter by chapter and take people.
Melissa ulikali chain unikaralla.
Take people through the main points of the Bhagavad Gita, one chapter at a time, having these kind of seminars. And, you know, when you give people the book, you tell them we have a class, you know, you can come for our class, or you give them the link, the Zoom link, that we have a class on the Zoom. You can listen to the class on Bhagavad Gita, but it can also be good. Somehow or other, once you put the seed in someone, you have to water that. And so you have to find ways to water that seed. You have to go back and visit the person regularly and ask him, did you read the book yet? Did you try to read it? Did you find anything you want to know about? Can I tell you a bit about the book? Yeah, you may think Bhagavad Gita is a bit too difficult, but they don't need to read it all. They just need to read one paragraph. Let them just read one paragraph and they can be changed. Prabhupada said, read one line, it can change their life. They don't have to go through the whole book immediately. Give them a chance. But if they get attached to the Bhagavad Gita, that's good. They want to have a Gita, that's good. They're starting, this devotional life is beginning. In the future, it will fructify. Don't worry. Okay. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maharaj, for your association. I'm sure we all, by your association, we all fired up and enthused to do small book distribution, prasad distribution, and go out and Harinam.
Yeah, very nice. I hope so.
Thank you for inspiring us. And yes, Maharaj. Jai.
Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
His Holiness Bhakti Vignavinatha Singh Maharaj ki jai.
Lord Bhaktivinoda ki.
Yay.
Hare
Hi.
Krishna.
Thank you very much.
Jai.
Thank you very much, Guru Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Thank you very much, Maharaj.
You want to sing a prayer?